Good morning, Lagos. Come on. Good morning, Lagos. Oh, okay, that's why you're not answering. Good afternoon, Lagos. I see there are students in the house. Greatest Nigerian students. I trust you now. Well done. So, I'm happy to be moderating this session. We have wonderful panelists here, and we'll be talking about digital infrastructure and as it affects you and Lagos State. So, I want you guys to pay attention. If you've been listening to all the presentations that have been made before now, a few things will have jumped out at you that will need for us to be innovative, for Lagos to become that digital nerve center of the world. We need advanced infrastructure. And what better panelists to tackle, this problem. However, before I start, I would like for each of our panelists to introduce themselves, their companies, what they do, so that the audience can get a feel of, the panelists that we have that we're going to be delving into this thing. So you tell us your name, the company, and what the company does in regards to digital infrastructure and technology. Starting with my immediate right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and good afternoon, Lagos. I have a slight confession to make before I introduce myself. I've been introduced as the Managing Director of the Rural Electrification Agency. And whilst that title is perhaps a nice to have, and I would have loved to just slide with that. Unfortunately, I'm trying to be a better person. That's my New Year resolution. So I'm coming out clean to actually let you guys know I'm not the Managing Director of the Rural Electrification Agency. However, I'm a stand-in. I'm a senior advisor to the Managing Director of the Rural Electrification Agency, standing in for him due to his unavoidable absence. And I know a lot of people usually say that, but this time it's true. He could not make it. Having said that, what we do at the REA is we're in the business of providing energy access to the rural, underserved, and unserved communities in the country with the goal of universal access. I'll say more on that when it comes time to speak. Thank you, and it really is a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Colin Sonebu. I'm the chairman of Signal Alliance Technology Holding Company. We are a technology holding firm that operates across Africa. We started in Lagos 29 years ago. We have an office in Lagos, we have in Abuja, we have in Kenya, but our business goes across, we have customers across Africa. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon all. I'm Dr. Krish, representing Africa Data Centers. We are a Pan-African data center operator. Currently, we operate in Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya, and recently launched the first AI factory in Africa, starting from South Africa. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Tommy Davis. You can call me TD. And I am the geriatric of technology. I am the collaborator in chief at TVC Labs, which is an entrepreneur support organization that finds, funds, and follows startups in Lagos, in Nigeria, and across the continent. I am President Emeritus of the African Business Angel Network, which I helped co-found, and I'm a co-founder of the Lagos Angel Network. Thank you.
Lars Johannesson, Rack Center.
Wow, I think they deserve a round of applause, a heavier round of applause. You would agree with me that I'm sure if we add all the experiences here, we'll be close to nearly 200 years worth of experience. So I think here we have a wonderful set of people that will do justice to this. But I'm going to start with Alas from your presentation. I was watching when the President Donald Trump assumed office. I think one of the first things he did was to sign this $500 billion, data center bill for AI, of which 100 billion has been, committed. And I'm thinking, how do we compete? As in from your vantage point, since you run data centers, what do you think the lapses are, the gaps within, the African, especially in Lagos? What do you think the gaps are? How do we fix these gaps to be able to be globally competitive on the digital infrastructure landscape, especially as it relates to artificial intelligence?
Thanks for that one. Number one, I don't normally like to talk about gaps because that brings you into what we don't have and it becomes a lot of problems. I would see those as opportunities, and I think there's a huge amount of those, and that's why I'm investing in Nigeria. Second, maybe comment is that compete against other countries in that sense is not really relevant. I think for me and our company and peers in industry is probably to create a system that kind of grows with Nigerian reality, Nigerian needs, rather than try to, copy something else that happened. I think all countries and all ecosystems, they dwell and build upon their own foundation, so to say. But if I'm going to single out a couple of things that we need to continue on, maybe just to repeat what I said before: power, people, public administration, and policy. And a lot of those stuff are happening. And if we manage to connect more people, and I know we'll do that. Remember that we still probably have in Nigeria about 50% of our, subscribers or individuals that are not even connected to the digital economy. That means that what we need to do as an ecosystem is to close that gap. Now, that's easier said than done. We talk about general affordability targets. How do I make sure that that access, basic internet access, does not cost more than, 2% of the person's monthly income? That's very easy to say, very tough to do. You need to bring down devices on the mobile side, you need to bring down a lot of stuff. But the biggest gap is probably to add more people into the digitized economy. We take it many times, all of us on this call, we take it for granted that we upload every single photo of family and friends to the cloud. The huge majority actually don't do that because it comes with a hefty bill to pay for it. They prefer to put that money somewhere else. Imagine if we could have that to happen all over. People start to store it because they can't afford it. Now you will see automatically that a lot of these gaps that you mentioned before will be closed. Because at the end of the day, this is not a demand problem in Nigeria. It's not a demand problem. Sometimes it is a business case problem. How do you make business out of it so we can invest even further? So that would be my short answer.
Thank you very much. So what I picked up from that, which is going to bring me to the essay on electrification, is one thing he mentioned as, an opportunity is power. So in that case, in that respect, what is your agency doing in terms of making sustainable power available, to data centers across, especially Lagos, but across Africa?
Thank you very much. That's a very important question. I would like to situate the conversation a little bit from the position of the REA so that my answer better aligns with the question. I stated quite clearly earlier that our mandate is to provide electricity access to rural, underserved, and unserved communities in the country with the goal of achieving universal access for all. Quite recently, that ambition had an accelerated timeline by 2030. The provision of electricity access is something that has to be done across three pillars. One is energy security. So this means that the energy that you provide has to be there and it has to be reliable. We're talking data centers, the reliability requirement and the service requirements are quite high. Apparently, it's true for other industrial and commercial users as well, but we'll get into that. The second is equity, right? Energy needs to be accessible and it needs to be affordable, right? You can't have one without the other. And then lastly, it's environmental sustainability. So these are the three core pillars that at the REA we hold very critically when we design any electrification program or initiative. Now, as you might imagine, that requires quite a bit of balance and trade-offs between different actors, the government, industry. It's a hard act to follow and to balance, right? Having said that, you see why that is relevant. I would say that quantifying the challenge, the scale of the challenge, today, about 90 million Nigerians lack access to electricity, right? And of those of us that have access to electricity, we often rely on alternative power solutions, usually diesel, but increasingly solar. Now, there's a particular piece of diligent work that the Lagos state government has done that underscores this perfectly. Back in 2023, the state government, I believe with the support of the SC4, did an audit of all the existing generator sets in Lagos. And the figure was quite astounding to me, right? About 4.3 to 4.5 million generators were found in Lagos with a capacity of between 18 to 20 gigawatts. That's 18 to 20,000 megawatts, right? Or 4 or 5 times our average generation capacity in country for the entire grid. I'll repeat that for those that did not follow the numbers. The 4.5 to 4.3 million generators found in Lagos with a capacity of between 18 to 20 gigawatts is at least 4 to 5 times our average generation capacity in country. What that tells me, right, is that the grid as such is quite distributed and that people are willing to pay very highly for reliability. Now, whether that leads to equitable outcomes for all the communities is another question. You could say that's the reason for our existence, so to speak, to cover these gaps. Now, recently we did a least cost analysis to see what it will take to cover every single community in country using the most efficient technology. The figure we arrived at was $23 billion. Ooh. Right, out to 2030. Now, what that clearly spells out to me is that we can't rely on public funding alone. We have to find and put together the necessary structures to mobilize private capital at scale to solve the problem. Otherwise, we're not going to solve the problem. From the budgetary allocations to what is available in concessionary funding today, I don't think it begins to scratch the surface. Now, back to your question. I realize this is a very long prologue into answering that question, right? The provision of energy is insufficient alone to provide the required outcomes we need, which is economic development. Now, that analysis I spoke of just covers the basics. Now, what happens when you start layering other forms of productive use? Because energy, as we know, is quite pervasive, right? Energy affects the nexus of every single sector in the country, from agriculture to the digital economy, education, health, you name it. One of the lessons that we learned from deploying our first sets of mini grids using the private sector approach is that it really is difficult to measure demand. You don't know how a first-time community is going to react when you give it power. Apparently, adjacent communities tend to overcrowd that community. Who knew, right? So things like that is also very important. So we felt like it's important to layer all of these productive elements so that the electricity provision, which is mostly driven by the private sector, ends up having a commercial proposition beyond the de-risking capital that is provided to kickstart those ventures. I call them ventures because that's what most people think, but this is actually infrastructure. It needs long-term patient capital. So I guess you could say that we're at the stage where we're having partnerships with the likes of the Galaxy backbone, with the likes of NCC to co-develop, to co-plan electrification initiatives that also imbibe connectivity access as well.
Thank you very, very much. I think that deserves a round of applause. So one thing I got from what he said is the underlining pillar of electricity being what I call SAS. He said security, accessibility, as well as what sustainability, which is what he said. And did you listen to the stats he gave around the generator that we have generating more than 4 to 5x what the entire country generates? I think that also deserves a round of applause. I'm going to come to Dr. Krishnan. You operate African data centers across Africa. Yeah. Now, so how is Lagos, strategic to what you are doing? And from what you have seen in other parts where you operate, how do you think we can get to that level where we can start to compete in a very sustainable manner, at least across, Africa?
Good afternoon, Shay. Good afternoon, all. When we look at Lagos, it is strategically positioned in at least in West African coast. On the technology side, we always say that Lagos is the fintech capital, but what I see is that it is becoming rather Africa's or the global technology capital now, and we have every resources what we need it here more or less. 7 to 8 subsea cable landing in Lagos, within 20-25 kilometers. Substantial bandwidth, more than 300 to 400 terabyte of bandwidth landing into Lagos. So that means we can easily reach to the global level much easier, much faster. And if you take even couple of subsea cables, they have the lowest latency to the US coast. In the telecom language, I can say 70 to 80 millisecond, you reach the US coast sites. And again, Lagos, as I mentioned, the tech hub and the brains, a lot of young talents are there. That is actually driving the Lagos to the next level. And honestly saying, we can actually push it beyond this because I think we are stopping at a level where we are feeling that, there's a stoppage. There's something stopping us. I really don't think anything is stopping us anyway. What I really feel is that, we can find so many excuses of not doing things in Lagos or in Africa or in Nigeria. The only thing is that what we need to look at is that how to get it over. Problems are there. Okay, let's say data centers, correct? We have around 13 data centers plus in Lagos, focused only in Lagos. People can ask why it is not on the other states. Of course, there are various reasons to that. There is business reasons to that. As I mentioned, 8 subsea cables. But taking this capacity from Lagos to Abuja or Lagos to Kano is a bit problematic because of the business sense behind it. So that means the 180 to 190 million people on the other side of the world is not going to get the right internet access? So these are certain areas which the private sector, the government, and the policymakers need to come together and fix it so that the Lagos get more into the front line.
Thank you very, very much. I'm going to come to Mr. Collins. He's a very well-known man in the industry. He's been in technology for years. And the statistics show here that, yes, despite the mobile penetration, the internet penetration in Nigeria is still around about 45%. So what do you think is holding us back in terms of infrastructure for us to actually have this deep internet penetration essentially in Nigeria and more specifically in Lagos? What can be done? What is the barrier that we need to do? And then how do we leapfrog and get to that next level? Because everything seems to be connected. There's nothing you want to do now that you do not need, whether it's a cloud service or internet and all that. How do we get to that level and collapse this time to fast track our progress?
Thank you. I'm not sure there's a magic wand we have that can solve the answer what you asked, but I think that sometimes us as technology people we tend to forget that the purpose of technology is to serve the people. What has made Lagos what it is today is because there are 21 million people in Lagos, and these 21 million people demand services. So anything we are building today that does not serve these 21 million people And a Lagosian can look at himself and say, if I were to be in New York, I were to be in Kenya, will I feel the same way the technology serves me in Kenya or in New York or in Lagos? Once we benchmark ourselves about that, as I said, the biggest advantage Lagos has today is that it has 21 million people, but serving those 21 million people to feel that they're part of the global population is the opportunity all of us have here. So anything we're building that does not improve that, you're going to have 21 million people connected and still feeling frustrated. For instance, all the people coming to this event today, if Lagos State says today, as a public corporation, says nobody will get here and spend 1 hour in traffic getting here, right? And challenges all of us, and that becomes the challenge for Lagos. I say, well, for everybody living in Lagos, you cannot spend more than, how do we use technology to make sure that nobody spends more than 2 hours or 1 hour in traffic coming to an event or any part of Lagos? And now it becomes a challenge for all of us who are providing infrastructure to see how we can solve that problem with technology. I think until we can benchmark ourselves to the point where we think that serving these 21 million people is the purpose for which all of us are building technology and even working in Lagos State. I think that there are three kinds of things in Lagos. There are the people, there are the companies, and Lagos State. Now, if Lagos State starts building technology also, or even making policies from the point of view that this technology is supposed to serve 21 million people, and Lagos itself ensures that when these people get these services, Lagos gets remunerated because we pay taxes, and then the transactions on those networks also gives Lagos money. So it's almost like a public corporation. So even as Lagos State is making policies today, those policies have to be in such a way that if Lagos State uses technology to provide good services to people, people will pay Lagos State as a public corporation. And those of us who build businesses here, out of that ecosystem, will also make money and then also serve the people we serve. And then people want to live, work, and play in a city like Lagos. Because it's not a station where part of the challenges we have in Lagos will not be that young people are building companies here. Once they make money, they want to relocate to somewhere else, they feel they can have a better life. Lagos State must monetize any child born in Lagos State must be able to monetize that person's life, okay, from childhood to adulthood to death, and provide services as you go through that life. And make sure that you don't get to a point you say, oh, can no longer live in Lagos because Lagos is not livable. I've made my money. If I want to enjoy it, I should go to Kenya. If I want to enjoy it, I should go to New York. I think when we think of technology from that point of view, from a people point of view, it will tell us the kind of problems we need to solve so that people can work and play in Lagos. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it deserves a round of applause. I'm going to come to TD, sir. How many people have startups here, or building startups, or trying to build startups? So one of the questions I often get from startup founders, I'm also a startup founder myself, is after we have built this product, there is this challenge of funding, for local startups, And one of the things I've seen in other climes, especially if we compare Lagos with maybe other countries that are like us, maybe like Israel, is that they tend to sort of get this funding easy. It comes, and people are ready to invest. Our own investors are still looking at, our own big men are still looking at buying land, property, because that is time tested. The question is twofold. Is it that the startup founders are doing something wrong, or is it just that the people that have these funds don't find those startups investable, enough to put their money into? I want us to shed more light on that for us, sir.
It's actually... So the question is, why aren't startups getting funded? It's very simple, okay? Investors don't understand startups. Startups don't understand investors. And that is the problem we've been solving with the Lagos Angel Network, Africa Business Angel Network, AfriLabs, Innovation Support Network. The list goes on. But and you just heard with LASRIC, we've supported over 75 startups with LASRIC funding. There's a fundamental disconnect that we are finally solving, and that is trust. How do I trust that this founder startup is going to use my money to do what they said they are going to do? If I give them this $50,000, how am I sure they're not going to buy the next version of the latest car? That's on the, everybody thinks, oh yeah, that's legitimate. You can see all the investors nodding. Yes, yes, yes. But on the founder side too, you heard somebody earlier, the young lady from space. If I share this knowledge, this thing I want to build with this investor, how am I sure they're not going to take my idea and go and give it to their own people to build? So we have both sides of the equation there. Now, globally, for investment, there's something we call a digital data room. The digital data room contains all the documentation that shows the progress that the company has been making from when it started to now that it is seeking investment. How much money has gone through the bank? How many customers have been acquired and failed? How many people are employed? What are the employment terms? What agreements do you have with partners? The list goes on. International investors expect this to be presented in a structured fashion that is authenticated and verified. If you tell me you're a limited liability company, I expect to go in and see your CAC registration. If you're operating in Lagos, I expect to see your Lagos State tax certificate showing that you're operating in that state. There's a whole list of fundamentals internationally. And if you look at those that raise money successfully every time and those that don't, therein lies the difference. It is that structured access to documentary evidence of progress that indicates that you have a core value proposition that is acceptable to customers that you are targeting, and therefore they are determined not only to buy from you, but to also recommend you to other people so that you can scale. It is these fundamentals that most of our young people here haven't been taught. They've not been told, oh, you have to have all of these things. You have to put them in this sequence to demonstrate that what you are building can scale. Because that's all startups are about, is scalability. Okay? Small businesses, profitability. Startups, scalability. And that fundamental difference is where the funding issue comes from. We've solved it, and as the Honorable Commissioner will tell you, we've proven it with LASRIC over the years using something called the POEM framework. The POEM framework is my framework for African startup founders to provide documentary evidence of progress in an ambiguous manner and in a trustworthy manner to not just local investors, but international investors too. Thank you.
Thank you very, very, very much. I think I want to take it from there. So there's this conundrum with startup founders as well. From your vantage point and with the experience that you've had, at what point do you think a startup, especially in the technology space, should start to seek funding? Because I see that, like you just said, Mr. DT, yeah. At what point do you think they should seek funding? Okay, just as you've said now, you've alluded to the fact that sometimes you fund these companies and they're buying the latest cars and all that. which presupposes that it's almost like you're giving them the end result at the beginning. So at what point do you think they should seek funding? Or would you recommend bootstrapping, especially for tech startups, at the initial phases? What is your opinion?
Okay, let me share the startup funding journey with you. Let me put the first caveats, which is, look, no two startups are ever the same. It's impossible to find any two that, But having said that, there is a journey of funding. And it starts, as you just said, with the founder, which is bootstrapping. You use that at the ideation phase. I have an idea. How do I, who's going to buy it and so on. Once you have the concept of a minimum viable product, then you go to your family and friends. Uncle, auntie, brother, sister, we call that family and friends. Okay? And typically, you're supposed to use that family and friends funding viable product. What is the minimum viable product? It's the first thing that proves that, yes, you can create value, but more importantly, that people will pay for it. That gets you your customers. Once you start getting your first set of customers, then the next funding comes from people like me, Collins, Lagos Angels. We're called angels for that reason. And typically, these are small compared to where you're going. All right? To you, it may be big because $50,000 is not a lot of money in terms of where you're going, but where you're starting from, it can be. So angels will typically give you anything from 10, 15, 20, all the way to $500,000, maybe more. Once you've raised that, by the way, your family and friends give you credibility for angels. If your papa never give you money, why may I go give you? That's my question. As an angel, are you with me? Your uncle no give you, no get so they don't trust you with money. Once you get money from angels, it gives you credibility for the next level, which are the venture capital funds. The difference between angel and venture, angels, not their money, then they spend. Venture capital, what they do is they go to people like us and say, come, bring small. They collect. Then they have a lot more. So venture capital they invest much, 5, 10 times more than angels. But it's about the stage at which your company is. It's nothing to do with, there are what we call numbers. This is why I talked about the data room. Okay? If you are making $1,000 a month, you can't raise $2 million. But if you're raising $20,000 a month, guess what? They'll be begging you if you say you want to raise $2 million. So it is all revenue driven. How much are you making? How many customers do you have? How many customers are you keeping? That's what brings the investment funding. I trust that helps.
Thank you very, very much. I hope all you young guys who want to start businesses have heard from the horse's mouth. It depends on what? Your revenue, your bottom line. People are no longer investing in just paper ideas. And I hope you've taken one or two things away from that. So my next question is going to be to Lars and Dr. Krishnan. When are we going to start having hyperscalers in Africa? Data centers, global data centers, are sort of shifting away from storage focus to compute engines. When the commissioner was making his presentation, he was talking about building our own local LLMs. But we need data centers to host these LLMs for storage. I mean, people are still paying so much with the foreign exchange going through the roof. When are we going to start having African focused hyperscalers that specialize in compute engines? That will be for you and Dr. Krishna.
Let me take the opportunity before Krish comes in. I think we share the same view regarding this. Hyperscale is already here. They are in Nigeria since many years back, and they're thriving, doing good business here. And I think the infrastructure that we built up, both ourselves and our industry partners, is top-notch. There's nothing that the hyperscaler cannot find in the Nigerian data center as to today. Nothing. And that's a good thing. Now, you can say, when will they scale to next level as they've done in many other locations? Well, that becomes a bit of a capital allocation decision on behalf of the hyperscalers. Because as I said before, there's no lack of growth. Both in Nigeria and in this continent, the digitized growth is fantastic. Now, but if you sit on the hyperscaler side, that growth might be 3 times, 10 times, 20 times bigger in the other location. At the end of the day, they are demand driven. So they will build wherever the need will come. And there are still locations in the world where this growth is 10, 50 times what it is in this continent. And we need to be humble about that one. But when it comes to the infrastructure we have in place, it's top notch. There's nothing you can find here. Second thing that sometimes any US dollar investment company thinks of is, of course, the macroeconomic stability. I think there was a bit of a scare in the market probably 2 years back, and I'm super happy, and we should all be very proud, actually, of how good the CBN has managed the economic environment the last 1.5 years, because that instills tranquility, predictability. And when you have that, together with a growing demand, then you will see everyone comes in, because at the end of the day, this is a business decision, and they will come in. So we should be proud of the infrastructure we have. It's built for the hyperscalers, and they know it.
Our time is up, but I'll just have Dr. Krishna just 60 seconds just to respond to that.
You know, I agree with what Lars mentioned, and that's what the market also says. But at the same time, you know, okay, hyperscale is one side of the picture. We also need to build in our own infrastructure, because we need to really minimize that dependency factor so that, you know, the data remains local, because that's the bottom line. Data is the oil. That is the money all about. That's what we are talking about. If you need to drive a quality LLM, let it be here, because you can't copy paste LLMs. Okay, you need to rework on that in our own way of doing things, correct? So those infrastructure, the quality infrastructure, the tier 1 infrastructures, the latest infrastructures will support those activities. So that's what the way we need to look at it, and we need to push it forward.
Thank you very much. I think our panelists have done a very good, they've done justice to the topic, and I think they deserve a bit better round of applause. Thank you very much. As we round off here,